And this is the Rob Kall Bottom Up Radio Show, WNJC 1360 AM. And tonight I'm talking with Josh Stieber. Actually, it's a pre-recorded afternoon interview, Friday afternoon. I'm talking to Josh Stieber. He's a former U.S. Army specialist and a member of the Bravo Company 216, whose acts of brutality made headlines this week with the Wikileaks release of the video Collateral Murder. Hi, Josh.
Hey, how are you?
Good to have you here. So we were just talking offline about you have some goals that you want to accomplish here in coming out. And the first one I understand is to make it clear that this is not something unusual. Is that right?
Right, yeah.
Why don't you talk a little bit about what you want to get out and what you're concerned about?
Yeah, I guess the two main goals are, one is how my friends who are in the military and who were there and other members of the military are getting treated with this, and all this is being pinned on their shoulders, rather than us looking at how we train our soldiers and what we're told to do in combat, because according to how I was trained and the mindsets that I was surrounded with, what happened in the video is what was supposed to happen. And if you look at like military.com and look at the discussions happening on there, most members of the military are defending what happened in this video. So the first goal is saying it's wrong to pin everything on the shoulders of the soldiers involved, and two, that if people are shocked by this, then we need to be having a discussion about warfare in general and saying that this is what it looks like, and if we're uncomfortable with it, then don't just dismiss it as a few soldiers gone bad, but say this is what war looks like, and maybe we need to re-examine our quickness to use this as a way to solve problems.
So in a sense, what you're saying is that the people who were in the video joking and almost having fun engaging in this process, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and this is the way the Army wants them. The military wants them this way.
Yeah, I mean, and just thinking about how the discussion has gone about the conversation that the gunners were having in the video and the callousness that was shown, that relatively speaking, the conversation they were having wasn't really that extreme, and even in basic training and all throughout our training and just a lot of things in the day-to-day life of the military is far more extreme than what happened in the video. And some of our military cadences that we would sing when we were running were songs about killing women and children. And in terms of extremity, things that I encountered on a day-to-day basis within the military are far worse than anything that was said in that video.
Now, have you ever killed anybody as a soldier?
I don't know if that's essential to this conversation.
I guess, okay. That's fair enough.
I guess I feel in the same way that, I feel like the whole problem with this is that, we can watch the video and we can look at what killing looks like and think whatever thoughts about the soldiers who are doing it, but the reality of it is that, I guess to use an analogy, that this is the nature of the beast, and if we sit there staring at the fangs of the beast, then we don't look at the rest of the animal. Okay,
fair enough. So, yes, because I know that back in World War II, only about 20% of soldiers actually killed the enemy, and the others shot high or missed or didn't shoot at all, and then the military changed their training so that now it's up around 98% of the troops will kill. And that's because that's what they want. And that's what you're saying, is that if they do their job and get members of the military to be killers, which is what they want, then this is what we see when we get a video from a helicopter.
Right, yeah, and I would definitely agree with that, I've looked at that study, and there's a lot of psychology that goes into the military training, and having compassion or even thinking through things or trying to evaluate what you're doing is not strongly encouraged, and from the psychology that goes into the training, it's about simply obeying what you're told, and then a lot of fear coupled with that, leads to some pretty ugly instances.
Now, you were in that troop in Bravo Company when this video was taken?
Right, I was in the troop, and a couple days before had disobeyed a command that I didn't feel was justified and was not allowed to go on that mission, which I think goes to show again that, this is what is expected, and I was being punished for saying, maybe we should be a little slower to pull the trigger. That was the expectation, that in a situation like that, you had to do that. So if I hadn't gotten in trouble a couple days before, then I probably would have been in that video.
So, what was it that you had protested that got you in trouble?
A somewhat similar situation where a bomb had gone off, and I was commanded to just kind of fire in a general direction with no set target, and I said I'm not going to shoot and just spray random bullets around, and the potential of somebody getting hit who wasn't involved with it, that I'm not going to do that, and that didn't go over so well. And
who did you respond to? Who was all giving you that orders? Not necessarily the name of the person, but what kind of officer? Or
it would have been a sergeant in E6 level.
Okay, and how did the sergeant respond when you said that to him?
We were hearing from fairly high up the ranks that this was what we were expected to do, that, the ultimate goal was to make it home alive, and people lost their idealism pretty quickly, and that's what a lot of people were fighting for, was just to make it back safely. It was kind of echoed throughout that, some of the stuff that we're doing probably isn't right, but we're in this horrible situation, and this is what we have to do to get out of it. So that was kind of the common mindset.
Were you alone in your company and standing up in the way that you did, or were there others who had the same feelings as you?
Different people to different degrees, but I ended up kind of taking it to the next level and saying that, this is not something that I can continue to do. And I think that video shows just, how these situations that we're put in, and the training that's coupled with that just eats away at your conscience and leads, to some pretty horrible things. I said that, that's not something I can continue to do anymore, not the kind of person that I want to be, and so I ended up becoming a conscientious objector.
Well, wait a second. You just took a leap there. You were there in Iraq, and you said, no, I'm not going to just start blasting away at people. And what ended up happening? And you're saying you ended up being a conscientious objector. What happened in between?
In between, I was taken from my position as a gunner and then put on the radios. And so for the rest of the deployment, I was handling the radios and actually didn't even know what conscientious objection was until I got back. But I was, digging through my options of how I could change the way I was living my life, and found out about conscientious objection, and realized that was the answer for me.
Okay. Now, once they took you off of the gunner position, was there any punishment at all, or officially, or kind of socially among your fellow soldiers over there?
There was no official punishment, but yeah, I mean, things get phrased, and again, I think it's important that we're not quick to criticize people in that situation, but again, that people feel like they're in this war zone, and, you know, the goal is to make it out alive, and so by saying that, you know, at times it was more important for me to do what I thought was right, and that decision, and I guess different things could be argued about it, but that decision, some people felt like was putting other people at risk by trying to place my conscience above that instinct for survival. So I think on both ends, I don't want to continue to put other people in that situation, and yeah, there was definitely some negative attitudes towards those decisions. But
could you get into that in a little more detail, the negative attitudes? What kind of responses? What do people say to you?
I mean, again, I think, you know, if the goal is to make it out alive, and I was the person saying, I think it needs to be more important to follow my conscience, that yeah, that's potentially putting people in harm's way, and I would try to explicit things, I guess, from logical bases, but yeah, people felt like what I was doing was a threat, or any of the other soldiers who were hesitant to just kind of indiscriminately shoot were told that they were a threat, and that if they couldn't handle pulling the trigger, then they couldn't defend their friends, and to myself and yeah, a few other soldiers who were hesitant, you know, would be told that we were a threat, or that we weren't good soldiers, or that we didn't care about our friends there.
You know, it makes me think, here in the Philadelphia area, we have the Army Experience Center. It's something like a 12,000 square foot video game arcade run by the Army, where they literally have full-size helicopters and Humvees that they can pretend they're shooting from. And in this game, they have to differentiate between the enemy and civilians. It sounds like where you were, that differentiation was gone.
Yeah, I mean, we were out, you know, in a large city in Baghdad, and so, yeah, anyone could potentially be your enemy, and a lot of times, the attacks we got were from a faceless enemy, from a bomb or from a sniper attack, and, you know, people would get hurt, and you would have no idea where it came from.
And so what, you were just told to just start shooting in the general direction, regardless of who was there?
In different situations, yeah, that happened.
Yeah. So you would be in one of those situations, and it'd be over, and let's say like the one that we've all seen in this video, and you'd come back. What would the soldiers be like? What was the mood like after a mission like that?
I would say that, you know, there would be a lot of varied responses, but probably the one common response is just gratefulness, maybe for having survived the day and made it through a situation where, you know, situations happen where people didn't make it out alive. So if you could get through something like that and not have lost any of your friends, then that would probably be the focus of the reaction.
Now, these guys from the video we've seen, they were up in a helicopter. They weren't in much danger, were they?
I mean, I know a few helicopters have been hit, but yeah, I would say it's...
That's a different. I'm just saying that's a different kind of mission. It's like not like they were under fire. They were sent out, hit a target, and then went back. Would they celebrate when they came back?
I can't speak on that because I didn't know any helicopter pilots or governors or anything. But, you know, I can say, I guess, another thing about the video. Again, I think, you know, yes, I'm definitely anti-war and think that a good conversation can be had from this of why war, especially this war, just doesn't make sense based on what's shown in this video. But I think we also have to be fair and honest in how we're talking about it. And one thing that I don't think the video really explains is that the people who were in the helicopter were supposed to be keeping watch on the squads that were on the ground. So while they themselves might not have been physically threatened, they were feeling the threat for the soldiers a couple blocks away. And again, even though they might not have been physically threatened, they don't want that to be on them, that, they were supposed to be in the air to protect the soldiers a few blocks away. And if something were to happen to those soldiers on the ground, then that would have reflected on them and their duty.
Right. Yeah. And so what I'm hearing you say is, you want to give a little slack to the men whose voices we hear, because that's the way they've been trained, and that's the system, and that's what we've created over there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But
that's the primary.
Then we have your case. We have what you, as a man of conscience, did, where you refused to do that. So it's a tough. It's kind of it's an interesting issue to look at, that even within the system you were able to pull free of it. But are you unusual? Are there many people like you who have come back from Iraq with your attitude, who spoke up, said no?
There have been a small number. I actually, when I got back, felt like my story and my experiences were something important to share, and that, the responsibility is on all of us to work towards other ways of solving problems. So I walked and biked across the country for 6 months and ended up meeting another veteran who felt pretty much the same way. So we joined our voices and were able to have that, what I think is a very important dialogue with a lot of people all across the country.
Just the other day, one of our editors, Elaine Brower, who's a mom of a veteran from Iraq, she wrote a piece about how we shouldn't be surprised by this. I think she's talking along the same lines as you, that this is the way it's done. This is the normal process over there. But what she goes on to say is that most, or all, she says all, which is taking it a little too far, of course, but she says that they like to kill, that there are an awful lot of soldiers over there that like to kill, that they celebrate them, that they have pictures and they save them.
That kind of thing definitely goes on. There are people who brag about their kill count, and people who have on their screensavers images of dead bodies, but I would by no means say that is anywhere near representative of the majority of soldiers that I know.
So it's not a norm.
No, I would say it's definitely not the norm. And again, I think that the primary motivation for a lot of people is just that survival instinct. And I guess one way that's helped me kind of cope with everything and deal with everything, because for a while I was very tempted to just dismiss my fellow soldiers as simply cold-hearted, but I saw that even in the worst of situations that people would still say, well, this might be wrong, but I want to do this to make it home, to be with my family again, or to be with my friends again. So even in the most horrific of situations, there was still that glimmer of humanity of somebody saying, I'm doing all these things to be with the people that I love. And so I guess for me, it's of asking the question, how do we take that small glimmer of humanity that's alive even in the worst of situations and keep that from getting so suppressed, and hopefully spread that to people beyond just one's own immediate family or friend circle.
So tell me, if some good could come of this, with your message and the greater awareness that we have, what would you like to see happen? What would be the ideal outcome for this?
for us to have a serious discussion about the nature of this war, and I think we're missing that discussion if we just say, here's a couple of horrible soldiers, shame on them, and then forget about it. I think that the ideal outcome is to say, this is what war looks like. If we're uncomfortable with it, shocked by these images, then we need to seriously, and before we say this is the way we solve our problems, and this is the way, again, it just seems so ironic of saying this is the way we create freedom or democracy or go to help another country, that there just seems like a huge gap in logic over that.
And what would be in that conversation? What would come up? And how would you see things being changed through that conversation?
I would use one of the things that you mentioned before, just the psychology that goes into the training and that study that was done of the high number of soldiers in past wars who have not shot to kill, and the training that's been done to take away that hesitation or that act and lay over decisions that, that's what the military wants. So I think, it needs to be an examination of the entire institution, and that, again, if we're shocked by the language that is in the video, we need to look at the language that is being used day to day in the military, and the language that's being used for young kids right out of high school being in basic training, and young impressionable minds being told this is what the military is about. And it's again the nature of the beast. It's what's being intended by that language and by these mindsets that are carried out through the training.
Okay, so I've got my producer helping me here. What's the Contagious Love Experiment?
That was the name of the trip that I mentioned, where myself and another veteran spent 6 months walking and biking across the country, visiting different charities and organizations, and asking the question that we say war is the wrong answer. Well, what are some of the right answers? So we met with organizations that we felt like were bringing people together and trying to find solutions and say, it's okay that we don't agree on every single thing, but there's so much energy, I guess, that's spent in demonizing people who don't think the same as us. And if we spent that time and energy of creatively finding positive ways to solve problems, then I think the world would look a lot differently. So that's what the trip was about.
What kind of response did you get?
Largely very supportive, and people were very encouraging and very generous, and it was a very refreshing view of humanity just to see how positively we were received. And you have a blog, don't you, Josh? I do, yes.
Could you say what it is?
It's contagiousloveexperiment.wordpress.com.
And you have another blog as well?
No.
No? Oh, okay. I thought you had a different one too. Okay, so how you doing now? You've been out of the. How long you been out of the Army?
I got out about this time last year.
So about a year. And how are you?
I've been good. I think the trip was very therapeutic for me, and I guess another thing to add with all this is to also answer that question is that so many soldiers get back from these experiences, and if they're hearing things like some people are saying about these videos that, oh, shame on you, look at how horrible these soldiers are, you have all these soldiers who are coming back, and this is, a common experience, and they feel like they can't share any of these frustrations or any of these concerns because you look at, the judgment that's appearing from this video, so they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to try and work towards other solutions. They just want to put everything behind them, and sooner or later, those decisions and someone's conscience catches up with them. And so I've been grateful to have a lot of support as I've chosen to follow my conscience and do what I feel is right, and not say that, I just want to put this whole situation behind me, but I want to ask, what can we learn from it, and how can we turn this into something positive? So I've had a lot of help with that.
Do you think Congress should respond?
I guess I haven't really considered that. I mean, I think, again, it would have to be on a large-scale level. If it's just, saying that we need to discipline individual soldiers and pinning, again, this whole situation on one or two people when this is how they were taught to act, and how this is how probably the majority of people in that situation would act, would be extremely short-sighted. And if there's going to be anything talked about at that level, then it needs to be an examination of the larger system.
Gotcha. Josh, it's a kind of a personal question, but we hear an awful lot of soldiers coming back with post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury, closed traumatic brain injury from being in IEDs, explosions that don't injure but can hurt your brain. Have you had any of those things happen to you that you know of?
I think everyone who gets back to some degree has some form of post-traumatic stress, fortunately, mine only lasted, maybe a few months, again, I would point that back to the support I had in making the decision to not try to suppress my experiences, but of trying to turn them into something positive. And, there's a lot of soldiers who get back and don't have that support network and don't feel like it's worth the effort to try to address what we experienced or what went on, and instead turn to things like alcohol or possessions or different things to try to push those memories behind us. And I found that often those are the ones who end up, experiencing those syndromes the worst, and who are the ones who are in the most need of help and the most need of support and understanding.
Well, it sounds like you've taken a good journey in the last year and made some wise choices. And I want to thank you. Your voice is important, and keep on doing what you're doing. This is the Rob Kall Bottom Up Radio Show, WNJC 1360. I've been speaking with Josh Stieber, who was there when this came down, what we just saw this week. Keep it up, Josh. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.